Morning, everybody, and welcome to this meeting of the Regional Development Assessment Panel. I declare the meeting open at 9:32 a.m. and welcome everyone in attendance. I acknowledge we're hosting this meeting today on the traditional land of the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation. We acknowledge the Aboriginal people as the traditional custodians of Western Australia and pay respects to elders past and present, and the ongoing connection between people, land, waters and community. This meeting will be run in accordance with the DAP Standing Orders 2024 under the DAP Regulations 2011. The meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the DAP website in accordance with Regulation 42A of the DAP Regulations. Panel members may refer to technical devices throughout the meeting to assist them in considering the information before them. I'd like to take the opportunity to introduce all our members participating today. My name is Dale Page. I'm the presiding member today. In the room with me to my left, we have Karen Hyde, Deputy Presiding Member, and Clayton Hyam, Specialist Member. With us from the City of Kalgoorlie-Boulder, we have our local government DAP members, Councillor Terrace Winner and Councillor Nadia Turner online. For Part C of the agenda for the Shire of Northam item, we have Councillor Julie Williams and Councillor Desmond Hughes. And for Part D, Shire of Narrogin, we have Shire President Lee Ballard and Councillor Graham Broad. We have apologies today from Councillor Kirsty Della, our local government DAP member, City of Kalgoorlie-Boulder, and Councillor Mia Jirac, local government member, Shire of Northam. There are no members on a leave of absence. In relation to the minutes, all minutes of previous meetings are available on the DAP website. We'll move now on to Part B, which relates to the City of Kalgoorlie-Boulder. Item 1 is declaration of due consideration. And this is where I'm going to ask panel members whether they have considered all the documentation contained in Part B of the agenda and the Part B related information that was uploaded to the DAP website. Members, there was an email that came through this morning which contains some information from Main Roads WA. If members have not had time to adequately digest that, I'm happy to move a procedural motion to adjourn the meeting for a few minutes so that you can review that information. Have members been able to review and digest that information that came through this morning?
Yeah, yes, we have.
Okay, all right. Well then, can I please confirm by a show of hands that members have considered all the documentation in relation to this application? Thank you. Moving on to item 2, disclosures of interest. I haven't received any declarations of interest to this point. Do members have any interests they'd like to declare? And on that note, could I check with our local government members whether this item has been before you at a council meeting?
Thank you, Presiding Member. Yes, this item has come before council for a council meeting, which both Councillor Turner and myself was present at.
Okay. Well, in that case, we note the standing declaration of interest that if the agenda items have been considered at a council meeting, the local government DAP members acknowledge that they're not bound by any previous decisions or resolution of the local government, and that you undertake to exercise independent judgment in relation to the matters before you. Local government members, you're comfortable with that standing declaration?
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Excellent. In that case, I'm very happy for you to continue to participate and make decision on this application. Are there any other declarations any members would like to raise? No? All right, moving on then. Item 3, Form 1 DAP applications. We do not have any for the City of Kalgoorlie-Boulder today. We only have the item that is the Form 2 DAP application, item 4.1. Lots R409, R407, R406 and 50. Number 526253, 6 Hannon Street, Kalgoorlie. Alterations and additions to service station, convenience store, showroom, access parking, landscape and signage, DAP number 17/01346. We have one presenter on this item today, Nick Hidding from Hidding Urban Planning, who is speaking for the recommendation in the report. Nick, we still have you online. I remind you that in accordance with our standing orders, you have been allocated 3 minutes for your presentation, and I will call you to time when you get close to that 3 minutes. Over to you.
Thank you, presiding member, and good morning, panel members and City of Kalgoorlie-Boulder staff. My name is Nick Hitting Urban Planning, representing OTR 339 Proprietary Limited, the owner of 526 to 536 Hannan Street in Kalgoorlie. The application before you this morning is a Form 2 amendment application to a development which has already been approved by the DAP and has been substantially commenced. We've reviewed the Responsible Authority report and note the recommendation for approval with new and amended conditions. The RAR sets out the project history as well as the fact that this proposal is a change to a non-conforming use, which was brought about by a zoning change under the final stages of the adoption of LPS 2 in late 2023. Notwithstanding that, the proposed amendments can be considered under the terms of clause 22 and 23 of LPS 2. In respect of the new and amended conditions, my submission did set out an objection to new condition 34, which seeks for the right out movements at the Hannan Street crossover to be restricted and for the median island to be extended to restrict those movements. So our objection to that is a principal objection in that in seeking amendments to an already approved and substantially commenced development, any new or amended conditions relate to the changed elements and not involve fundamental new matters for the DAP to consider. So that's where our objection comes from. In our experience, this has happened a few times over the years where new and amended conditions involving completely new matters have been raised at the RAR stage, and the DAP has not accepted that and have really made their decision confined to the amended elements only. And the fact remains that there's an approval there already and it's substantially commenced, and the landowner can continue developing the site under the terms of the current approval. However, this Form 2 application that's before you is seeking minor layout changes and built form changes to suit the new service station operator. So we think that the new and amended conditions should relate to those things only. So we'd seek for new condition 34 to be removed. If I have a little bit of time, the only other thing that we want to say is amended condition 14. We don't believe there needs to be any involvement of main roads in detailed design for car parking, loading, vehicle access ways, and car parking line marking. I believe that that kind of detailed design needs to go to main roads, and the city should be able to do that by themselves without relying on advice of main roads. So we'd seek for that condition not to be amended. Otherwise, we're very happy for this amendment to be approved. It would enable our client to finally be able to redevelop this site. Over the years, there has been that zoning issue which has precluded our client from developing the property. There was a previous DAP application, a Form 1 application to develop the site. However, the zoning issue precluded that from proceeding. So that's it for today, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Just on the issues that you've raised now, was the issue of egress onto Hannan Street raised with you during the original Form 1 approval process?
Thank you for the question. I was not involved in the Form 1 application, which I think was in 2017. So it was with a different applicant and a different fuel operator. So our client purchased the property a few years ago, probably 2022, something like that. We attempted to do a new Form 1 application, which was ultimately withdrawn because of other issues. And we took steps to enact the current approval, which is now substantially commenced. But through that, we understand when it was first considered by Main Roads and the DAP in the first Form 1 application, there was no requirement for access to be restricted in the manner sought now.
Thank you. Councillors Winner and Turner, do you have any questions of this presenter?
Nothing from either of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Go ahead, please.
Nick, main roads tell us that there's a light standard in the median, or right opposite where you want to exit right. I haven't had a chance to go back and look at the plans, but is that the case? And if so, what will you be doing about that?
Thank you for the question. Yes, there is a light pole in the central part of Hannan Street, which with a very small median island around it. That is located generally opposite the new crossover, but the new crossover is quite wide, such that right turn movements out from that crossover can still occur. However, understanding that there may need to be a relocation of that light pole, we'd like the opportunity to look at that further rather than having a blanket restriction on movements and the requirement to extend the median. We'd prefer to look at whether the light pole, per the advice this morning, could be simply relocated probably only a few metres down the road to make sure it's not completely opposite that crossover.
Thanks. Should the condition then relate to the need for the applicant to be responsible for relocation of that, should that be needed?
That would probably be better. Yes. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Karen?
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation. In terms of the drive-through component, has your analysis suggested that causes any additional potential for conflict on the point of egress or access to the site? Any additional traffic load?
Thank you for the question. No, our understanding is not the case. The drive-through component is really for prepackaged goods and coffee. Instead of customers parking their vehicle and getting their coffee, it's quicker for them to simply go through the drive-through component. It's not a fast food outlet or anything like that. So our information suggests that there is really no major traffic increase on what's been approved before for that function.
Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you. All right, if there are no other questions of this presenter, we'll move to a discussion with the local government officers. We have with us today Kevin Tang, Paul Lees and Elisa Alanis Fuentes with us from the city of Kalgoorlie-Boulder. Councillors Winner and Turner, city officers, I'll give you an opportunity there at the end of questions to respond to any issue that we don't cover with questions. So we'll deal with questions first. Councillor Winner, Councillor Turner, any questions of the city officers?
So I have one question. With the amended condition here, obviously if we don't have the right turn into Hannan Street with perhaps some changes to the relocation of the light pole, there's going to be quite impacted traffic on a side street there, which I would have thought would have been, from a city point of view, would be more of a concern for us to have that large volume of traffic on the side street. So perhaps some modifications to Hannan Street would be included in this would be better, and leaving the right turn. I don't know what the city officers' views are on that.
We can't hear you, Kevin.
Kevin seems to be having some technical issues. So can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Paul.
Right, thank you. I suppose from the city's point of view, we're cognizant of the fact that main roads have the responsibility for managing that main highway, and particularly busy 4-lane piece of infrastructure into the city. I think their concerns probably relate to current traffic volumes and the ability for large vehicles to make that right turn across 2 lanes into the south, into the eastern lane, opposite lane, and whether the swept path will work in a way that, got Kevin up here right in my face. Kevin, I don't know.
No, there's nothing you can do.
Nothing can do that. Will work in a way that those large vehicles can safely make that turn, and that in terms of the pontooning that results from the traffic lights which are near the city's office here, that there is the gap in the traffic which will allow that movement of a large vehicle to operate safely. Clearly, I think it can be demonstrated that raised medium can be altered to accommodate the swept path, and the light pole could be moved to an appropriate location. I think that could be part of the modifications of that. But what we haven't had from Main Roads is from their responsibilities of managing the highway, we haven't had the confidence from them that they actually that it's been demonstrated that it works sufficiently. I understand that their response is probably could be clearer, and that would be more helpful to DAP if it was clearer.
So Paul, can I just ask, just as while you're on that subject, so that we get clarification on this, and I can't remember which page it is, but in your responsibility authority report, there are actually a couple of statements that there are no changes being proposed to the approved vehicular crossings in terms of location and width, and that the proposal does not alter vehicular access to the development. So in your view then, what changes are being made to the development that would now warrant a new condition imposed in response to Main Roads' comments?
From my perspective, I understand that Main Roads probably have concerns with traffic volumes and want to ensure that right turn, in terms of the traffic volumes and the gaps in the traffic, can be made safely.
Okay, so I understand why Main Roads is doing that, but I'm asking from your perspective, given this is a Form 2, what is changing to warrant imposition of a new condition in this manner?
I don't think there's anything changing the development itself, and I don't think that the drive-through is going to cause sufficient traffic to result in an issue. I think the issue for Main Roads is the large vehicles doing the right turn.
Okay.
It's unfortunate that we didn't have the time for this to be fleshed out a little, to get some more clarity out of from Main Roads on this, and I know it puts the panel in a difficult position. This is not dissimilar, I think, to the issue had with the hotel up the road. Some of you might remember the 4-story hotel on Gattaca and Great Eastern Highway, where there was a bit more work required, and we brought it back to the DAP, and DAP was satisfied that work was sufficient. But it is a difficult position on the basis that they are actually responsible for that road.
Thank you, Paul. Can I revert back to Councillors Winner and Turner? Are there any further questions from our local government DAP members for the city officers?
So I've got a further question, that given that the original application, these concerns weren't expressed by Main Roads, I don't believe that there's been a great increase in traffic on that road. However, if we have, like I said, if we have access from the side street, the other problem is, I think the issue Main Roads may be looking at is probably truck and vehicle deliveries there rather than normal traffic, it could cause a huge increase in traffic through the laneway at the back, which is a bigger issue as well. So moving taking the access with a right turn onto Hannon Street is going to create, I believe, looking at the development, bigger issues in other parts of the development. So you potentially, what are your views there, Paul? That we're going to create way bigger problems with this development if we change that access.
Councillor, I don't disagree with you, and my comments certainly aren't towards the fact that this should not be investigated. It should be investigated, and it's probably more than probable that it can be satisfactorily addressed. Unfortunately, Main Roads have not got that evidence before them to ensure that it can be designed and operate safely. But I agree with your position absolutely. That's a narrow lane. We would want to see more traffic through that lane. The alternative, of course, was a left turn, which, of course, then would result in those vehicles having to use the roundabouts further up the road to either make a U-turn or to use alternate access and back onto the highway. So from a local traffic impact perspective, a right turn onto the highway is a better outcome than a left turn and then those vehicles having to impact other roundabouts and street networks.
Thank you, Paul. Councillor Turner, any other questions from you?
Not from me.
Councillor Winner, anything from you?
No questions from myself. Thanks, Presiding Member.
Thank you. Other panel members? Karen?
Thank you. Mr. Lees, rather than the way that condition 34 is currently worded and taking into account the discussion that we've just had, I mean, would there be an opportunity to have a condition which suggests that prior to lodgement of an application for a building permit, that detailed drawings of that crossover onto Hannon Street, including any modification to the median and relocation of the light pole to allow for a right turn movement, could be submitted to the city for approval, you seeking advice obviously from Main Roads, and constructed accordingly. If there were a condition of that nature, obviously that places the onus on the applicant to sort of demonstrate that that functions in a way and have that discussion with Main Roads, which would perhaps be a preferable outcome. And obviously if there was no success with Main Roads, then obviously the applicant would need to sort of rethink and come back again, but that would at least allow things to sort of progress.
Through the presiding member, yes, I had that conversation with Kevin this morning, and if the condition, as you suggest, to the satisfaction of Main Roads or in consultation with Main Roads, we want to write it.
Yes.
You want to write it. I think that's valid, and as you say, rather than delaying decision, it gives the applicant the opportunity to demonstrate that that's capable and can operate safely.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Clayton, anything from you?
Paul, just in relation to Mr. Hidding's request to remove on advice from Main Roads in amended condition 14, do you have any comments on that?
I support that.
Okay.
Yes, the city is capable of approving car parking and other matters on site.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. I think we've addressed all the questions, unless there are any other questions. Paul, is there any brief comments you'd like to make overall, or are you happy for us to move on to the report?
Just overall, we've carefully considered the drive-through. It's restricted, as we understand, to products that are sold within the store. So we're satisfied that the traffic impacts, additional traffic movements, will be relatively small, and we support the development. We'd like to see it go forward.
Thank you very much. All right, we can move to the report then. Could I seek a mover and second for the recommendation in the responsible authority report before you? Does any member wish to move the recommendation? Karen Hyde. Do I have a seconder? Clayton Hyde. Thank you. Karen, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, presiding member. Yes, I support the development proposal, noting that it is a non-conforming use. However, it is a Form 2 from an existing approval and a use that has been considered. And also noting that the proposal is including some minor modifications and a drive-through aspect, which is an A use on the site. I think also from reading and looking at the plans, there's a reduction in parking. There's no additional impact in terms of traffic and trip generation, despite the drive-through use. I've noted that main roads have some concerns. However, I think there is an alternate approach and way forward, and therefore I would like to suggest the first of two amending motions, please. An amending motion 1 would be to replace the current wording of new condition 34 with alternate wording, which I'll read it out and then we can seek a seconder. Prior to lodgement of an application for a building permit to this development, comma, detailed drawings relating to the crossover onto Hannon Street, comma, including any modifications to the median and relocation of the light pole to allow for a right turn movement, comma, shall be submitted to the city for approval on advice from Main Roads and thereafter constructed in accordance with the approved drawings.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that amendment? Thank you. Do you wish to speak further as mover?
No, I think that's evident from the discussions that we've had, presiding member. Thank you.
Thank you. Clayton, do you wish to speak to the amendment?
Just to say, there is a principle here that Mr. Hidding referred to, which is whether or not we can put a condition in which I suppose alters the original approval, but has very little to do with this particular amendment. However, in this case, I think I would have agreed to removal of condition 34 as it currently is worded, but in this case, we're not saying that through the new condition, we're not saying that you can't have that right out turn. All we're simply saying is you need to provide some detail to see how it's going to work and what impact it might have on the median and the light pole. So for that reason, I'm happy to support it.
Thank you. Does any other member wish to speak for or against this amending motion? No? Karen, as mover, would you like to close on the amendment?
I'm just happy to go to the vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's take a vote on that amendment though. Then all those in favour? Carried unanimously. Back to you as mover.
Thank you. I have a second amending motion, and that is to condition 14, which is to delete after and line marked to the satisfaction of the city, replace the comma with a full stop and delete the remaining words on advice from Main Roads, Western Australia.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that amendment? Seconded, Clayton Hyan. Thank you. Would you like to speak more to that?
I think you just know that this is in the bailiwick of the local government. It doesn't require any input from Main Roads, and therefore we keep things simple.
Thank you. Thank you. Do you wish to
No,
add?
no.
All right, unless any other member would like to speak for or against that amendment, let's vote on that. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Back to you.
Thank you. Only just briefly, therefore, with those amendments in place, I think the development should be enabled to go ahead. I'm particularly mindful of the local elected members' consideration of the traffic network and, less than satisfactory impacts that preventing right turn access might have on laneways and, other adjacent uses. So I'm comfortable with these amendments in place to support the proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Clayton, as seconder to the primary motion.
Thank you, presiding member. Look, I'm happy as well to support this. It's a fairly straightforward simply a removal of the showroom use and replaced with a drive-through component. And I think having now dealt with those amendments, it's fairly easy to support because it does comply with or aligns with the scheme, even though the service station is a non-conforming use. So without further ado, I'm happy to support it.
Thank you. Would any other member like to speak for or against the primary motion? No, all right. I might very briefly just acknowledge I'll also be supporting the recommendation for approval, although it's now a next use, the service station. It's already been approved. It's not being intensified through the changes being proposed. The convenience store is being expanded by the inclusion of an incidental drive-through component, and the showroom is being deleted, which actually reduces the demand for car parking. The rest of the Form 2 amendments proposed are only minor, and some, like the increase in landscaping area, actually improve the proposal. So I'm happy to support. Karen, as mover, would you like to close?
I'm happy to go to the vote. Thank you, presiding member.
Thank you. All right, all those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to item 5, section 31, SAT reconsiderations. There are nil. And with that, I thank Councillor Terence Winner and Councillor Nadia Turner, our local government DAP members for the City of Kalgoorlie-Boulder, for their attendance and participation. We will see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving then on to part C of our agenda, which deals with the item for the Shire of Northam. I would like to welcome our local government DAP members for the Shire of Northam to the panel, Councillor Julie Williams and Councillor Desmond Hughes. Can you both hear us clearly?
Yes, we can. And if it's okay, we're going to actually share a computer screen because we're having a lot of noise issues with using 2 screens so close together.
No problem.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on then to item 1, our declaration of due consideration. Panel members need to have considered all the documentation contained within part C of the agenda and the part C related information that was uploaded to the DAP website, noting that an R13 directional response was published on the 20th of May 2025. Could I please, from panel members, confirm by a show of hands that you have considered all the information? Thank you. Item 2, disclosures of interest. I have not received, and the team has not received, any declarations of interest to this point. Could I check with our local government members whether this item has been before you at a council briefing or meeting?
This has not come to a council meeting in any way.
No, it hasn't.
Okay, great. Could I then check with any members whether you have any other declarations you would like to make? No? Great. Moving on then to item 3, our Form 1 DAP application for us today. 3.1, it's lot 54, number 77, Wellington Street, Northam, St Joseph's School, modifications and additions, DAP number 25/02862. We have Dan Pearce from Hatch with us today and Chun Chong from Santelli Chung Architects with us. Dan, I believe you will be presenting on the item and you just have the support from your architect with you. Is that correct?
Yes, presiding member, thank you. And
okay. I remind you that in accordance with our standing orders, you have 3 minutes, and I'll call you to time when we get close to your 3 minutes. We've read everything you've provided, so I will call you to time when you get close. Over to you.
Very good. Thank you, presiding member. Thank you, members and councillors, and hello, Shire of Northam team. And Chun, look, everything's pretty much set out in the notice. Look, we're very thankful for the support of the Shire, like working through the application. It's been quite well executed. Worked through any of the sort of relevant issues, which I think are very well documented in the RAR report. Our presence today is largely to just provide an opportunity for panel members and councillors to put any questions to either myself or to Chun in relation to the development. And I thank Chun and the Shire's team for providing that clarification on the sea containers. There's only two matters that we would like consideration of the panel today. One is in relation to condition 7, which we think is now redundant because there is going to be no covering to that dust extractor. So for the reasons set out, we think that that condition can be removed from the approval quite easily. The second is a later item. One of the key elements that we need to sort of get to site immediately to do is in relation to the transportable classrooms. The installation of them on site needs to occur prior to the rains setting in, if it's possible to do it. So they need to sort of operate on a bit more of an expedited pathway. With the conditions 10 and 11 that relate to the construction traffic management plan, there's obviously no issue at all in those management plans being prepared to accompany the main portion of work. But what we're hoping is that the advice note just provides a really clear signal to council team that there is an opportunity and a pathway for them to enable us to just install the sea containers without those other management plans being implemented. We would be looking to implement that as soon as possible, subject to this approval with and a building application being commenced. So if that is possible, that would be terrific to just include that as advice for the Shire's benefit. We have foreshadowed both the changes briefly with the Shire and understand that there's no issue in principle with either of those changes. Obviously happy for you to confirm that with Cobus when he has an opportunity to speak. But yeah, that's essentially all we're asking the RDAP's consideration of today. So that is our time, and we're more than happy to answer any questions that you might have in relation to the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Councillors Williams and Hughes, do you have any questions of this presenter?
No, we don't. Thank you.
Okay, does any other panel member have questions of Dan? Go ahead, Clay.
Dan, you mentioned when you spoke then about putting an additional advice note in it, and you mentioned the sea containers, and I thought it was only about the transportable classrooms.
Yes, it is only in relation to the transportable classrooms. The sea containers are a separate matter, which I think Chun's response to council sort of articulates the position in relation to those.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, thank you, Dan, for your presentations. We might move on to the local government officers. I believe we have Jacob Smith and Quibus Levote with us from the Shire of Northam for this item. And I might ask our local government members first. Councillor Williams and Hughes, do you have any questions of the local government reps?
Yes, I think in relation to the request to have the temporary classrooms put in place without the management plan, whether the officers are actually confident and comfortable with that happening. Thank you.
Thank you through the presiding member. Thank you for the opportunity. I just need to clarify that I have become involved in this proposal very late, as I'm currently standing in for the Shire's now resigned manager of planning services. So my knowledge of the application is somewhat limited. However, I have done a bit of research, and I thank you, Councillor Williams, for that question. I have considered this, and I am of the view that with an appropriate advice note attached, there will most likely not be any significant issues as a consequence of that. And it is also I think the council officers prerogative on how they clear that condition. We've discussed this at length with the applicant, and we are very satisfied that we can clear that particular condition at the time satisfactorily, and we are happy therefore for that particular advice note to be added. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, any other questions of the local government reps?
No, thank you.
No.
Okay, great. Any other panel members have questions? Go ahead.
Thank you. Is there any particular reason why condition 1 speaks to this being a valid approval for a period of only 2 years? Generally speaking, the DAPs allow for a 4-year substantial commencement from the date of approval. Would the Shire have any objection to it being a 4-year approval rather than a 2-year approval?
Thank you through the presiding chair, and we have no problem, with that being changed.
Thank you. I don't have any other questions. So,
No, fine, thank you.
I might just have a couple. So could you comment on the applicant's request to delete condition 7, please, from your perspective?
Yes. Again, we are also satisfied, given that further clarification has been provided in the updated plans. We also consider that condition number 7 is now surplus to the actual requirements of this approval, and therefore we also support the applicant's request that condition 7 be deleted from the officer's recommendation.
Thank you for that. I just have one other question. So condition 8 refers to the schedule of colours and materials being submitted for approval prior to commencement of works, but there's nothing about implementation. So would you like us to add something to this condition that requires the colours and materials? I'm just mindful that you've got sea containers and transportables going in here. So I wanted to check whether you'd be comfortable with us adding something to this condition that requires the colours and materials to be implemented and thereafter maintained in line with the schedule to your satisfaction. Or do you think that's covered off by a different condition?
Would you like to answer, to speak to that?
Yeah, sure. I think we would like to see that addition to the condition.
Okay.
Yeah.
Be good just to sort of cover our bases in a worst case scenario.
Okay.
No, I do think that is a very reasonable request, and I won't have any issues if if condition number 8 were improved to include those details.
Okay, thank you. I don't think there are any more questions for you, but before we move to the report, is there anything that you would like to very briefly cover off that hasn't been dealt with via any questions?
I cannot think of anything.
No? Great.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Then we might move to the report for the item. And in front of the panel, we have a recommendation for approval in the Responsibility Authority report. Would I seek a mover and seconder for this recommendation? Anyone wish to move? Karen Hyde, thank you. Would anyone like to second the motion? Clayton Hyam, thank you. Over to you, Karen.
Thank you. I'm happy to support this proposal. I find that it's generally compliant with the planning framework and also meets much needed demand from additional school students, particularly secondary school students, which is always good for a more regional local government area where it's hoped that families will remain and find a sustainable future. Understand the temporary nature of the transportables, albeit that it's a temporary nature of the sea containers rather, and going to be adequately screened by temporary nature of the transportables, which will be adequately screened by the landscape. Understand that the sea containers are part of the storage facility of the school. I'm satisfied with the heritage assessment, which has also had a peer review, and the management of works, etc., I think is adequately covered by the range of conditions. I would, however, like to propose an amending motion, please. I have two amending motions, but this is the first, which would be to delete condition 7 and insert a new advice note in accordance with the applicant's proposed wordings with respect to conditions 10 and 11. The Shire may waive the requirement for preparation of these management plans prior to installation of the transportable classrooms.
Would you like to deal with those individually?
I can do, yes.
Let's deal with condition 7 first.
Deleting
Do I have a
condition 7.
do I have a seconder for the deletion of? Thank you, Clay. Do you wish to speak further to that?
I think that's been dealt with by the updated plans and discussion with the Shire and the detail that's been provided as to how the dust would be managed. Thank you.
Thank you. Clay, seconder, do you wish to speak?
No, I think it's quite self-explanatory.
Thank you. Does any other member wish to speak to that amendment? No? All right, we might put that amendment to the vote then. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Would you like to deal with the advice note now?
Yes, advice note, the amendment 2, and that would be to add a new advice note which would relate to conditions 10 and 11, which relate to the management plans, just indicating that should the Shire wish to waive that requirement, that they may. The reason is, have we got a second for that one?
I do not. Does anyone wish to second that amendment? Thank you, Councillor Williams. Wish to speak further?
Yes, the reason for saying that is that this is something which would then put the responsibility back to the local government without the need necessarily to have to come back through the planning process and seek amendment to those conditions. And I think it's something that the Shire is quite capable of managing.
Thank you. Councillor Williams, do you wish to speak on the amendment?
No, I think it's all been said very well. Thank you.
Great. Unless any other member wishes to speak.
I want to speak against it, Madam
Okay.
Chair. I have concern using an advice note to change the content of a plan of a condition. And I don't think that's appropriate to, in your condition, say you shall do this, and then an advice note say, well, you don't actually have to do it. I would have proposed that at the beginning of conditions 10 and 11, some wording along the lines with the exception of the transportable classrooms, So I again reiterate that I don't think we should use advice notes to alter the intent of a condition.
Thank you, Clayton. I might speak briefly to it. I do concur with Clayton that it's a bit difficult because it actually doesn't leave the applicant any certainty about whether or not they'll get the outcome they hope. But given the applicant has been the one that has requested this, in principle, advice notes shouldn't change conditions, but given the applicant has requested it, there's obviously been conversations had. I'm happy to let it through at this point. Is there anyone else that would like to speak for or against this amendment? All right, let's put the amendment to the vote. All those in favour? Carried. And against? Sorry, Clayton. Carried. Thank you. Reverting to you, Karen, as member of the primary.
Thank you. I just have one other amendment, presiding member, which would be amendment 3, and that is simply for condition 1 to become an allowance for a 4-year period of commencement rather than 2, as is currently identified.
Thank you. Anyone wish to second that amendment? Thank you, Clayton. Anything you'd like to add?
It's a standard procedure for DAPS approvals, and it just allows for all sorts of issues that might occur in the short term to be resolved without the need for the approval to lapse. So it just gives a little bit more breathing space.
Thank you. Clay, anything? No. All right, unless there's any other further discussion on that amendment, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously.
Nothing more from me. Thank you.
Nothing from you on the primary. Clayton, do you wish to speak to a second
Yes,
to the primary?
thank you, Presiding Member. I know the school's been established on this site for quite some time. I had an interesting thought. It's a reservation for a church. I wondered whether the school was actually a non-conforming use, but I won't go down that rabbit hole. The proposed extensions, in my view, have been handled well and appear to fit seamlessly into the existing school buildings. The Heritage Report supports the proposal and advises that the proposed alterations will not have any negative impact. I don't have any issues with transportable classrooms. They're a fact of life in almost every school these days. I note the car parking assessment concludes that there will be ample parking on site, and I agree with that. I'm not a great advocate of sea containers, but noting the proposed location and condition to be imposed, I'm prepared to support those sea containers in this instance. This is a good development for Northam and aligns neatly with the objectives and intent of the Northam local planning strategy. So I'm happy to support it, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Local government members, do either of you wish to speak for or against the primary motion?
No, we're fine, thank you.
We're quite happy with it.
Okay, great. Before I speak very briefly to the primary motion, I'd like to move one further amendment, and that is to amend condition 8 to add a sentence that states the approved schedule of finishes shall thereafter be implemented and maintained in perpetuity to the Shire's satisfaction. Do I have a seconder for that amendment? Thank you, Karen Hyde. Look, the reason for that, I covered it off in the question, is essentially there is no condition that requires implementation of the schedule of finishes mentioned in condition 8. And given we're dealing with some transportables and sea containers which are proposed to remain on site permanently, I think it's important that into the future the Shire has the ability to ensure that the finishes of those structures are maintained to a satisfactory standard. Is there anything that you wish to add?
No, I'm happy to follow through with that.
All right, unless there is any further debate on that particular amendment, I will put that to a vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Very briefly on the primary, I'll be supporting the proposed additions are consistent with the requirements of the scheme, existing land use and the intended purpose of the reserve, and it won't have any negative impact on the existing heritage values of the site. Although sea containers aren't usually permitted on reserves, the Shire's report confirms that in this case, they and the transportable classrooms will be acceptable given the level difference between the Oval and Duke Street, given the scale of the structures, and painted a colour that will blend with existing structures. So I'm dealing both with transportables and the sea containers here. And given the existing and proposed planting that will be used as screening. Aside from the transportable structures, I note that there were some submissions that were provided by the community and some concerns raised in those submissions. Most of those I note were issues relating to construction impacts. Those can be managed via the construction management plan required as a condition of approval. So I'm satisfied that the submissions have been addressed in the responsible authority report. With that, I'm happy to support. So moving back to the mover to close, anything further you'd like to add?
Just happy to support this. I think it's really important for Northam's growth and sustainability. So good to see this facility move ahead.
Thank you. Let's put that primary motion to the vote then. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 4, Form 2 DAP applications. There are none for Northam today. Also, no Section 31 SAT reconsiderations. With that, I would like to thank Councillor Williams and Councillor Hughes, our local government DAP members for Northam, for your attendance and participation. Have a good day. All right, looks like we have everyone on board. Moving on to part D for the Shire of Narrogin, I'd like to extend a welcome to Shire President Hilly Ballard.
Thank you.
Welcome again, and Councillor Graham Broad, our local government DAP members from Shire of Narrogin. Item 1, declaration of due consideration. All panel members need to have considered all the documents or documentation contained within Part D of our agenda and the Part D related information that was uploaded to the DAP website, noting that an R13 direction response was published on the 19th of May 2025. Could I please confirm by a show of hands from panel members that you have considered all the documentation? Thank you. Item 2, disclosures of interest. I haven't received any disclosures at this point. Could I check with our local government members whether this item has been before you at a council meeting?
It hasn't been before a council meeting, it's been before a business session of elected members, it hasn't been before a council meeting, no.
Okay, thank you very much. What I will do then, just for the record, given there was a briefing of elected members, albeit not a formal council meeting, there is a standard declaration of interest that if any of the agenda items have been considered by council, that the local government DAP members acknowledge they are not bound by any previous decisions or resolution, and they undertake to exercise independent judgment in relation to the matters before them. Given this was a briefing and it is a standing declaration, I'm happy for both elected members to continue to participate in the meeting and the decision today. Item 3, Form 1 DAP, were there any other declarations from any other panel members? No? All right. Item 3, Form 1 DAP applications. We have one today. Lot 9, number 76, Narrogin Valley Road, Narrogin. It's a battery energy storage system, DAP number 25/02873. We have Tarek Osman for South Energy and Aaron Augustson from GHD presenting on this item today. My documentation says that you're speaking against the recommendation in the report, but you're actually not speaking against the recommendation, just the conditions. Is that correct? Both of you?
That's correct, presiding member.
Okay, great. So we'll just note that for the minutes. Tarek, we'll start with you, and I just remind you that in accordance with our standing orders, you have 3 minutes, and I'm going to call you to time as we get close to that time so that we stay on track. Over to you.
Always, thank you. Good morning, Chair and panel members. Thank you for the opportunity to present today, and I would just like to share my screen with you guys. Hopefully you can see my screen now.
Yes.
Yeah. So first of all, I would like to express my full support for the Narrogin BESS project with the DAP application number 25/202873, and respectfully seek the panel's approval for the development and adoption of the consultant's GHG commentary on the proposed conditions and notes as part of our submission. Now, to start with the Narrogin Battery Energy Project System, BESS is proposed 200 megawatt/800 megawatt utility standalone energy storage project located approximately 5 kilometers south of Narrogin, Western Australia. As you can see from this slide, the site is adjacent to the existing Western Power Narrogin South substation, offering excellent access to the grid and vegetation buffers around the site. Now, just to touch base on the battery operation and benefits, as you can see, the facility aims to enhance grid stability by providing bidirectional energy functions, helping to smooth out fluctuations and allowing an increased supply of cost-effective and clean renewable energy. The project is expected to charge and discharge stored energy enough to supply approximately 70,000 households for a 4-hour discharge cycle. In addition to improving network stability, the Narrogin BESS project will allow more solar and wind projects to be connected, joining the nationwide effort to mitigate the risks of climate change by reducing greenhouse gases and carbon emissions. In this slide, you can see the plan layout included in the development plan that I'm pretty sure that everyone is across it. Now, in terms of our stakeholder management and discussions, As you can see from this slide, following our internal stakeholder engagement strategy, cooperation has been a driving force from the very beginning of the project development. That including communication with different stakeholders associated with this project. That also including the Shire of Narrogin that we have started the discussion back in December 2023 all the way until the DA submission. Over the time, we had a few meetings with the Shire, at least 2 meetings, and we had a few emails discussing this project. In addition to that, like we have engaged the community that has been a key focus from the outset of the project. That's including different like strategy and different action that has been taken across the community engagement from door knocking all the way to face-to-face community information session. Finally, I would like to thank you guys and thank you the panel and the chair and respectfully request the development approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Tariq. Panel members, what I propose to do, if we can get rid of that presentation, please. What I propose to do, given they are linked, I'm going to allow Aaron his 3 minutes to present, and then I'm going to take questions from the panel to both panel members. Aaron, your 3 minutes starts now.
Thank you, Dale. Can the panel and all online see the presentation just before I proceed?
Go ahead. We can see your present.
See the presentation. Okay, yep. No worries. Thank you to the wider panel and councillors for accepting this presentation this morning. And I will start by acknowledging the Shire's supportive recommendation on this project. The presentation, like it was acknowledged earlier, does just go to the conditions, and we are seeking some modifications to the recommendation. As Tariq explained, South Energy has planned this project over a long period of time and has been in regular engagement with the Shire and its community. South Energy is a good corporate player with these types of projects and does expect that there are broader benefits to the community as a result of their developments. However, there's some underlying commentary in this presentation as to how South Energy has played its role across the region, doesn't generate inherent demand for infrastructure, community or otherwise, and we'll be providing some broader context on those discussions as we move forward. So I would just like to point out as well that the Shire did submit a request for information to GHD during the development application process relating to bushfire matters, and that matter was addressed. On to community benefits. So SPP 3.6, as I'm sure most of the panel appreciates, provides a robust and detailed framework for infrastructure contributions and community benefits arising from development proposals. There seems to be an assertion that there's an absence of policy framework in this space, and I tend to disagree. I think there is a robust policy, and if that policy is applied properly, then good outcomes flow. The SPP specifies that contributions should be directly linked to the generated need, fairly relate to the development, and are part of a broader consideration of demand, need, nexus, and impacts across a region. The policy, so SPP, does recognise that in regional areas, establishing a typical DCP approach is challenging, and that therefore agreement should be sought between decision makers where relevant and the proponents, and that those agreements should be entirely voluntary. It is strongly suggested in the SPP, at least in my opinion, that these agreements occur outside of the planning system. The Shire has recently adopted a Community Enhancement Fund policy. The contributions for this stage, based on the wording of the policy, could see the contributions, if that policy was strictly applied, exceeding, or being in the vicinity of $120,000 annually for the life of the project. Policy only relates to renewable energy projects and no other forms of development in the Shire, at least upon review of the Shire's documentation in its minutes and agendas. The policy does not appear to be widely consulted, although South Energy was invited at an earlier time to provide feedback to the Shire on its approach to community benefits, and that's acknowledged. But there doesn't appear to be any formal structured or extensive public consultation. The reporting suggests that the planning regulations were taken into account, although I can't find any evidence that the normal regulatory steps were followed or even mimicked, or the SPP principles were directly applied to the policy consideration.
You're at your time, Aaron, so I'll ask you to wrap up, please.
Yes, not a problem, sorry. I think with the benefit of providing the presentation to the panel early, I hope the points are taken. Happy to address any points of clarification during the any line of questioning. I will just say that relates to the Community Enhancement Fund conditions at 14, 15 and 16. There are a number of other conditions, including a public art contribution condition, that I think the same principles and same points of discussion apply. So Happy to take any questions from the panel, and Mr. Osmond is here as well for that.
Thank you. We can get rid of that presentation, please.
Aaron, are you able to stop sharing your screen?
Sorry, beg your pardon, sorry.
That's okay. All right, I'd like to invite any questions of the presenters, and I might start with President Ballard. Have you got any questions?
I do have a question, Madam Chair. It's probably for Tarek, but it's just a question in the in your proposal you've put forward. There's you've got clearly there's no workforce accommodation as part of this proposal. And my question is it likely to come forward in the future? As I'm sure you're aware, there's a zero vacancy of housing in Narrogin currently, and with a workforce of potentially up to 200, I'm just curious to know where they're going to be housed. Thanks.
Is anyone able to answer that question?
Tarek, are you able to shed some light on construction planning?
Tarek, are you able to answer that question?
Sorry, the question is directed to me. Yes, thank you for that. So in terms of that, I think in the meeting that I have discussed this point, but actually with the Shire, when I met them at the Shire of Narrogin Council, I think this is one of the things that should be discussed at this stage with the EPC contractor that have its own policy that should not be limited at this time. That's including renting, like townhouses or any houses that's available in the market. And at the Shire, or including any I would say temporary accommodation on site. So my point here is something that should be discussed at this stage of engagement of the ABC contractor. Please, Aaron, if you would like to add anything on this.
I think in a broad sense, the limited accommodation available in Narrogin and its region are understood. It's a problem that plagues renewable energy projects all over the southwest and in regional WA, and South Energy will be happy to step through that with the appointed EPC contractor at the appropriate time.
Any further questions? No. Councillor Broad, any questions of the presenters? Other panel members? I have a few, but I will hold mine.
Thanks for the presentation. There's a table attached to your presentation request, table 1, I think it's called, which talks to a number of other conditions that you're seeking amendment or removal of. I just wanted to ask you, it's in a different format to your PowerPoint presentation where you focused on public art and the community fund. I'm assuming this table is still something that you want to have considered?
Correct, that's right.
Okay. Were there any in particular that you wanted to highlight within that table? Because it's quite a long list.
Yes. So condition 9 relating to the screening of vegetation. I think the rationale for that is stepped out. There are some difficulties potentially with addressing that and also aligning with bushfire protection measures. Condition 10 just goes to the clarity of what is expected of South Energy in submitting that post-construction noise report. Simply because you'll note the noise report in the DA does note the potential on a conservative modelling basis for this development to be challenging some of those limits. Condition 14, 15, 16 relate to the CEF that we discussed. The decommissioning plan, the modification requested there is simply to remove the need for the Shire of Narrogin to approve the development, approve the decommissioning plan. We see the development as being long-term. South Energy will achieve tenure over this land, so they become the landowner and the decommissioning party, or at least the subsidiary of South Energy that owns and operates the battery. So there's no need to be concerned about the potential for decommissioning flight as in someone to just walk away and leave the facility unoperable and in situ. Condition 13 relates to public art development, and I think the rationale for that is spelled out in the presentation. Condition 7 somewhat relates to the same principles and rationale as the CEF and public art, and we don't think it is there is sufficient nexus back to the actual development proposed, given that the extension of the public road relates to an emergency access point only. Condition 18, apologies to the panel, just reading through here, seeking greater clarity from the Shire as to exactly what is expected of South Energy as a result of that condition. Condition 19 we think is better placed as an advice note, as it doesn't put any direct obligation on the development. And condition 20 relates to the aforementioned comments around decommissioning.
Thank you for that answer. Nothing further from me, but I would like to ask the Shire about those when we get to it. Thank you.
Aaron, you've mentioned that in your view, the community the CE enhancement fund doesn't have a proper planning basis, in that there is no planning policy. And yet, in relation to public art, you're saying there's no need in nexus, but there is a proper planning policy there. What's your rationale there?
My review of the adoption of the public art policy lands in the same position as the CEF. So the adoption, which off the top of my head was in 2021 by the Shire, contemplates adoption as an LPP, but instead adopts the policy as a council policy. It's not clear whether the regulations were followed as well in adoption of that.
Just say, oh no, that's all right. Yep, no, thank you. It's good.
Okay, I have a couple of questions. So in relation to the Community Enhancement Fund, has there been any conversations between yourselves and the Shire informally about an intent to engage with the Shire about some form of community contribution outside of this planning process?
Yes, there has. None that I've been personally privy to. Tarek, on the line here, if you're happy to disclose the content.
Yeah, I think back late in 2024, I got an email from Dell requesting us to comment on the Shire renewable framework that we have received, and in good faith we have put our comments on that section, on different section of that framework, and that including the CF part. In terms of that, even during our discussion and meeting with the council, we mentioned that we, as South Energy, we always keen to assist the locals by some I would call it volunteering fund, or volunteering support fund. But the problem here is that just make that from volunteering to a legal binding one. And I have noted also, and the framework, I think I just got some numbers. The Shire assumed to have a CF of $250 per megawatt, which is equal to 50K a year. That's indexed to CPI, but now what they are proposing is $150 per megawatt hour, which is about 120K per year. I think during our meeting with the council, even we mentioned that we don't want to have that to be legal binded in terms of the application, but as CF, as I would say, as an approach, we are keen always to consider that. Yeah.
Thank you. Just my second question, and you might not be able to answer this, but I'd like your best guess if you don't mind. What is your anticipated timing of stages 2 and 3?
It's really dependent on the progress of stage 1 and I would say the business case of stage 2 and the stage 3. But in terms of that, I don't have a short answer for your question, but I would say it's something that may happen within 5 to 10 years, stage 2 and stage 3. But yeah, it's really dependent on I would say the business case and the market itself.
All right, Thank you. That's close enough for me. Thank you very much. All right. Unless there are any other questions of the presenters, I might
just do a follow-up question to yours. Track. In the documentation, you've mentioned Regulation 74 as I suppose, the basis for seeking an approval to include stages 2 and 3. How do you align the stages 2 and 3 coming in 5 to 10 years' time with the second part of Regulation 74, which is really about saying that if there's significant change, then we shouldn't be including those without further information beforehand?
So,
Yeah.
Tarek, if you're happy for me to take that question. Thank you, Clayton. The construction timeframe for these kind of things for stage 1 is about 20 months. This is obviously a 4-year approval, and there's conditions. Condition 4 deals with the provision of later details relating to noise, water, and the design of those facilities. Some of the environmental assessment information has considered the overall impacts of all 3 stages together. It is simply, the rationale behind the 74 approach is simply one of resourcing and uncertainty on the level of commitment to proceed with the project. But I'd implore the panel to see, firstly, this development approval as an approval of all 3 stages on the level of information provided now. And importantly, that, with that 4-year approval and the 5 to 10 year timeframe that Tarek was mentioning before, if stages 2 and 3 were to proceed, we would expect that, at least stage 2 would likely start its construction, and certainly its design and its analysis that's required by condition 4 within that 4-year commencement period, and then a stage 3 proposal thereafter, but a continuation and replication of the existing project.
Thank you. Could I invite our local government
Sorry, Madam. Can I ask one more question?
Sure.
Just a question on the screening, which you've gone against. My question is the picture that Tarek put up a minute ago, which is actually in our paperwork here, shows very clearly that on the very first one he gave us an aerial to the south, there is no barrier between that and the neighbouring property. So that neighbouring property, when that person, the local landowner actually drives in there, there is no screening. It is just straight into what's going to become an industrial site. So my question around you talk about the screening's already there on the south. Well, it's clearly not on that map, and I'm just asking why that wouldn't be part of it. And also some of the early discussions we had with South Energy around the north side was they were going to put screening along that north side primarily because there is a residence straight across the road and it's also facing the road. So any comment on that would be great.
I think I'll lean quite heavily on the comments in the officer's report that discuss the separation distance of the facility to those receptors and the presence of roadside vegetation. That the distance, the topography of the land, remnant vegetation across the site, so yes, visible from the direct boundary at the southern neighbour, but that those initial factors don't generate a need for additional vegetation screening to be planted on the site.
Thank you.
Okay. Could the Shire reps come forward? Do we have any Shire reps in the room, or do we have, because I have here Azar one. Hi, Azar, nice to see you again. Dale Stewart, hi Dale. And Kiralee Harris, do we have Kiralee with us?
She's online. I'm
online. All right, great. Okay. Much like the others, I'll leave it to the end to allow you to make sort of broad comments, but perhaps if we can cover off on questions before we do that. President Ballard, any questions of the Shire officers? Councillor Broad, any questions of the Shire officers? I read your lips. I'm not being facetious. It's just that I have a hearing problem and I'm pretty good with that, so.
He's having some problems with his sound, I think.
We're struggling to hear you, but that's okay.
He's just saying carry on.
Yeah, we get that. All right. Other panel members, I have quite a few questions for the Shire. Other panel members like to ask questions before I jump in with my list?
I'm happy to
Go
start.
ahead,
In relation to the Community Enhancement Fund, I've read your response in the R13, but at no stage could I see any direct relationship or any advice that's coming out of or has a planning basis in the WA planning system. What's your comments?
Thank you for that, that member. Yes, agree in terms of the planning framework. However, based on the, I guess, best practice that has been applied in WA, there's nothing there. So as part of the national best practice, we've approached the Eastern State. Examples, New South Wales, whereby the Community Enhancement Fund has been applied in recognition of some of the shortfall of the community benefit, given that we're getting influx of a lot of this renewable energy. So from the Shire perspective, we've taken that front foot approach to sort of tackle the issue up front, addressing all these issues in terms of what are some of the community benefit that could be brought into the Shire to in some way improve the overall standards requirements in terms of heritage improvement, cultural employment, culture and arts and so forth, in terms of saying what benefit is this renewable energy bringing to the Shire. So hence why we've taken an approach, what are some of the best practice that's been applied nationally, and given that we haven't got anything in WA, those are the things that the Shire has sort of taken the approach in terms of providing this policy for the influx of renewable energy that's going to be presenting to the Shire.
Just as a follow-up then, given that our role is to make a decision based on current planning framework in Western Australia and planning schemes and planning policy, how do you think we can include that?
If I may, I think the answer lies in the current state of the planning framework in Western Australia. SPP 3.6, when it was first reviewed approximately, I think about 5 years ago now, didn't and still doesn't contemplate the nature and size and scale of this particular activity, or the volume facing communities such as Denmark. So in relation to SPP 3.6 typically relates to land subdivision, not so much development of renewables, which is a new age industry. As you may know, this is one of 10 or 11 projects facing Narrogin in the next 3 years, directly and indirectly. So therefore, we've looked further afield, such as the applicant has in relation to bushfire management. They've seen and reviewed West Australian DFIS guidelines and best practice, and it doesn't contemplate renewables. We've done exactly the same. In the absence of the current state planning framework addressing it, we've had to look for best practice, such as NSW, which has appropriate guidelines. We're firmly of the view that the state government will be adopting and reviewing such policies in due course. It's just not there yet. We're at the forefront here.
Yeah, I understand that. I guess my question was about how do we, as a decision maker who are bound by certain planning and legal rules?
I think the answer lies in provision with Azar's commentary around clause 67M and 67N, that the deemed provisions of the Plan Development Local Scheme regulations provides that answer. So we've actually got a advertised draft, to be fair, seriously entertained local planning policy called CEF. And why it hasn't been seen by the applicant in terms of the advertising process, even though it's closed about 3 weeks ago, is it was seriously entertained going back a year ago, as canvassed and consulted with the applicant numerous times. So The formal adoption should occur next week by council, to be fair, but it's been seriously entertained and canvassed for many, many months. So our view is that it is part of the planning framework, albeit not consistent with 3.6.
So can I just ask, if I may ask sorry, Clayton, to
No, it's
jump
all
in,
right.
to ask a couple of follow-up questions there. So is it a council policy or a local planning policy adopted under the Act?
As correctly referred to by the applicant in relation to the public art policy, council at the time, 4 years ago, contemplated local planning policy and adopted it as a council policy. That is fair. That's why we have actually relaxed that and put it as a condition, as an advice note to encourage the applicant. Whereas the LPP, local planning policy in relation to CEF and TWAs, transit workers accommodation, are council local planning policies under the scheme and the Planning Development Act, albeit the one in relation to CEFs presumably will be adopted by council next Wednesday.
Okay.
It has been advertised.
Okay, so just and just trying to get my head around the need and nexus, because that's the thing that always comes back and bites us, or otherwise is this need and nexus issue. These energy projects, in asking for the community enhancement fund, and I think I asked as well as this last week, what is the imposition on your community or the draw on your community by projects such as this? That would, policy or no policy, just trying to understand what are they leaning on or drawing from your community or using of your community that would justify a reciprocal contribution in your view?
I think not dissimilar to 3.6, which argues a direct nexus, but is often indirect. This is more indirect. The indirect nature is about the imposition on the landscape and industrialisation of that landscape, using rural zone land for an absolute industrial activity. It's not within the town site boundary, it's not GRV, it's not rated accordingly, it is on rural land paying approximately $1,000 a year rates. So in terms of the investment required in our community and changing of that landscape and amenity, the impacts will be significant. We are seeing over East the uncontemplated failure of planning frameworks in the East right now. There's a live topic. We have contemplated that. We are ahead of the curve, unfortunately, in relation to knowing our community extremely well. That we know will be the impacts in relation to the negative feelings associated with all of these renewable projects, unfortunately. But we know our role as a government authority in relation to our part to play to support the state's objectives. We appreciate and recognise that. But our community is a host community that will be significantly changed forever as a result of all of these projects, one of many. So whilst this might be the first cab off the rank, our view is that collectively they will significantly change a rural community to be at the forefront of renewable development in Western Australia. In that regard, we think they are direct impacts, not least of which are applications on scarce raw materials, which unfortunately is an advice note because we couldn't put it as a condition somehow because we have no ability to do so. But we know, for example, they're going to be drawing significantly on our water, our sand, our gravel supplies. That will directly impact the local government in relation to our ability to do road making, for example. We pay $1.50 per cube. We're going to be paying $9 per cube because there's scarce commodities, for example. That will be a direct, but arguably indirect. We can talk about housing all day long, which is going to be direct and indirect. We can talk about all manner of health and wellbeing elements associated with community unrest, with being thrust, arguably, unfortunately, one could say in Narrogin's case, into being a leader in relation to climate change initiatives. So they are indirect, it's acknowledged. The nexus is not direct pursuant to normal West Australian planning understandings. But that's not to say that they shouldn't be contemplated in a new world environment, which WA, as known as wait a while, is unfortunately seeing the brunt of what's occurring over East. We don't want to be in that position either, and therefore we think this is a direct and indirect nexus relationship argument.
Okay. Sorry, back to you.
Oh, sorry, thanks. We go to condition 4, which is about introducing stages 2 and 3, including them in this approval. And my question is based on my feeling of great uncertainty around what to expect in terms of 2 and 3, stages 2 and 3. So can you tell me why you're comfortable to include stages 2 and 3 when there seems to be no certainty around what it might be in 5 or 10 years' time?
Tricky. Given that the actual proposal being forward is more a photocopy of stage 1 itself, so there's not a lot of changes, and they depend looking at the surrounding area as well as rural area. And if we were to look at some of those issues being addressed up front, particularly in reference to the noise as part of the post-construction, the screening, and all those elements from a visual landscape perspective that can be addressed up front, then I can't see any risk for the stage 3 and 4. Unless there's a dramatic change to what we proposed, then yes, those are the things that will be discussed when it comes to in terms of the significant changes in terms of what's been proposed as part of the initial stage.
So there is still some uncertainty around stages 2 and 3.
And to reach it falls back to the Shire as part of discretionary saying, this is outside of what's being proposed, and it could be a matter of us to discuss with the applicant.
But we don't know what's being proposed.
Not at this clear stage, but from what we know, it's only a copy of stage 1 and stage 2, but not certainty.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you. Other than the Community Enhancement Fund, did you look at the comments that the applicant has raised on the other suite of conditions, and did you have comments on those requests?
In terms of the conditions that's been raised or concerns from the applicant regarding those particular conditions, the one that was mentioned with regards to the bushfire, so that's being put forward, so that's not an issue. The vegetation, condition number 9. So again,
so sorry, when you say the bushfire, that's not an issue. Condition 8 you're referring to. You're saying it's not an issue because you've heard back from DFS? Have you heard back from DFS? I think the RAR said at the time of writing that you hadn't yet received a response from DFS on the BMP.
That's correct. Hence why I think what we're stating that is that we retain this condition 8.
So you retain condition 8. But obviously at the moment it's to the satisfaction of a level 3 bushfire practitioner, which I presume you don't have within the Shire. So
no, we don't.
It really ought to be on advice from a level 3 bushfire practitioner to the satisfaction of the Shire. Okay, thank you. All right, clear on that.
The condition number 9, in terms of, so we discussed that in terms of what's being raised by the panel regarding the southern and the northern aspect of the vegetation for screening, and hence the discussion in terms of what are some of the likely issues in future. So if we've got address a lot of the issue in terms of screening, then that can be adequately resolve some of the concerns raised.
So you are suggesting for that you would wish to retain condition 9.
That's correct. We are.
How does that impact the BMP?
Sorry.
How does it impact the bushfire management plan? Has that been considered as part of it? Would stage 2 and 3 potentially require reconsideration of the bushfire?
It would be in terms of the bushfire impact. Given that the southern side of the southeastern side, where there's the remnant vegetation, which could impact the area, and hence why, as part of this proposal, those are things that need to be addressed as well.
So, just going back to Mr. Hyam's point, if we're unsure of the precise nature of the remaining stages, how can we be sure that the technical documentation on noise and bushfire and so on and so forth are adequate to deal with this proposal, and therefore that the conditions as we have deal with those future circumstances for the technical documentation.
Sorry,
So-
to interrupt as well. Kiraleigh's just got her hand up. I'm not sure if she's going to answer any questions.
I wouldn't mind if Kiralee, you're not on camera. Are you able to switch your camera on, please?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
But I'd like to be able to see you if that's
Yeah, sorry, I've just had major computer issues on all days. Let me just see. Says I'm on video, but I can't see myself. Might be my computer settings.
might be the bit at the top, slide it across.
Might need to slide a little thingy across at the top where you've got those little camera apertures.
Yeah, I've got the light saying it's recording. I'll just go to my settings. I think our IT might have disabled it. Let me just see.
You had your hand up, Kiralee, while you're having a look. Is there something particularly you wanted to respond to?
Yeah, so there's a few things. So there may appear to be a bit of a difference in the flow of the report. So I did write most of it. Quite a few of the conditions were modified with the request from the CEO for the regarding the public art contribution and the other conditions. With the DFES, what had occurred, because we advertised the solar application at the same time, quite a few of the state agencies got them mixed up and treated them as one application. So in result, and I know the applicant stated that the DFES response didn't really match as to what was actually in the bushfire management report. And I did send, and they responded, DFES on the 8th of May when it was due, that they reviewed the updated one, but they said there was no BMP report that was sent through. So I think it was just a miscommunication there. And then DWER, they said that with the acoustic report, it should be referred to our environmental health officers, and that given the scale of development, they need at least 8 weeks to assess and provide feedback on the development.
Thank you for that. Going back to the question. Yes.
Yeah, to the chair, the question I think can be answered in clause 8, in that the concern regarding Mr. Holmes' advice can be interlocked, in that part 8 can be slightly amended in relation to, or amended to reflect stages 2 or 3 and resubmitted to reflect those as was required. So I think that could be wound together if that was contemplated.
Yeah, we might deal with that as a separate matter, I think. Can I just, I know we were having a conversation about screening in condition 9, and we're sort of drifting all over the place now. So I'm going to bring us back to condition 9 because that's where we were at. And I have a follow-up. There's a statement in your report that says the site's size and separation distances mitigate landscape and amenity impacts, and no additional screening is recommended. So given that, can you explain why you have recommended condition 9, which requires establishment and maintenance of landscape screening? Also, that condition refers to the plan, but it doesn't require a plan. There's nothing requiring a plan. So could you clarify what you're actually asking for with that condition, please?
True, Chair. The intent is to require a plan showing the landscaping screening within that area, especially around the northern and southern side of the properties. In that way, it sort of improve the visual amenity for that area.
Thank you. All right, where were we, Karen?
Condition 10, the applicant has asked for that to be removed, the acoustic reporting. Again, I guess this goes to staging. At what point would you regard that condition to have been cleared?
Thank you, Tricia. I think again, a lot of it needs to be done as part of the post-constructive verification, so that we know what the actual is as opposed to what predicted. In that way, we can sort of determine as when it's in operation, what are some of the noise concerns, hence why
I understand the meaning of the condition, but when you've got a condition like that and you've got a stage 1 that's developed, presumably this would need to be a staged condition and keep coming back to you at the completion of each sequential stage and monitoring.
I think, through Chair, in terms of the uncertainty of what stages 3 and 4 will bring, I think in a way then the condition or the latest spending approval should be dealt with just stage 1 and 2 at this point in time, given the uncertainty.
So just on condition 10, sorry, before we move off condition 10. So whether or not there's an acoustic report and whether or not there is a post-construction confirmation that it'll meet the regs apply, right? So if it doesn't meet the regs, the applicant is saying then there are mitigation measures they can employ to ensure they meet the regs. So given the regs exist and they have to comply with the regs, doesn't matter what the reports say, is that condition needed at all? Because if they don't meet the requirements of the regs, then they need to make sure they do, right?
True, Chair. Agree with that aspect. However, in terms of the potential complaints, ongoing complaints, if it hasn't complied with, then it's best to have a condition ensuring that the applicant comply with the conditions of approval.
But your condition is asking for a post-construction report, and I won't go to where we would end up, but we don't generally support conditions that say you need to comply with a separate set of regulations because that has to happen anyway. I know that it gives you more power under the Act to deal with something, but the other Act is actually more powerful in a way. So I'm just wondering, why do you need the post-construction acoustic report? Because the so what applies. If that report says you don't comply with the regs, well then they just have to, right? So why do you need them to give you another report when actually when they start operating properly, it might be different again? I'm just wondering what you hope you achieve through that.
I think through Chair, it gives us that certainty of what the actual noise level that would be emitted from the operation of the development. And that way it gives us certainty. So if we do receive any complaint from the community, we can rely on those reports, say, hey, this is what report. Yes, I agree that it's under the separate legislation, but what it does from a compliance point of view and from the council and the community aspect, that we've got all those things covered up front.
Okay, back to you.
Thank you. Conditions 17 and 18 talk to upgrading and sealing of Booth Street, 17, and repair, replacement, reinstatement of road infrastructure at condition 18 that may be damaged. Now, the applicant is unclear about why upgrading and sealing of Booth Street is required, other than it's an emergency access. And then as far as the repair, reinstatement, replacement of any road infrastructure, they're saying it's uncertain and requesting deletion of that. When I read those two in conjunction with 14, 15 and 16 and the Community Enhancements Fund, is there the potential there for double dipping? I mean, is that, the road repair and so forth, is that something that you have determined there will be an impact upon from this development, and have you costed that as part of your work for the CEF? If condition 17 and 18 were to stay, and we could provide some level of certainty, would that not deal with some of the impacts that you're concerned about in terms of the community enhancement funding process?
Sure, Chair, if I can take that one. Fair observation, but I think the inference that the CEF relates to the very direct nexus relationship of road impacts, I think is unfair. I think the road contributions are a direct proposed impact, certainly. They've acknowledged the egress from the primary access, but during construction for a period of 18 months or so, with indicative of 150 construction workers, and emergency access to a very high fire risk environment in close proximity to a town in summer, where we have prevailing easterly winds coming directly across the town from the typical easterly winds will go directly across town. If there is a fire incident, they will impact the town. I know my Shire president wears a number of hats, one of which is an FRS captain and dual registered with the brigades. And he will be the man in the red and the white fire trucks attacking this development. So that emergency access will be used not just for emergency egress, but also for attacking the fire. It's a gravel road designed for rural use. We have an industrialisation of the development for the entire frontage only of the street proposed, with relatively small capital outlay. That would be probably in the order of about $80,000. We work typically on about $120,000 per kilometre to construct a rural road to seal standards in the bush. To suggest that it's not required may be a valid argument on a nexus relationship, but if that's the case, then we would be conditioning counter to that a requirement to do dust suppression for the entire operation of the activity, because it's a gravel road serviced by rural ratepayers in close proximity to our town site, with Western Power operators travelling that road all the time to the substation, and other normal people that use the road. So there is a nexus in our view in relation to the emergency exit that in our view will be utilised by the proponent and or their construction workers or other tradespeople and the like associated with the subsequent contractor during that period of 18 months. So if it's not sealed, we suspect that there might be an equal and greater cost associated with dust suppression, dare I suggest.
Okay, and in terms of condition 18, what level of clarity or
and through the chair, we actually have amended suggested contemplation because I think incorrectly we gave a lack of clarity around the length. So we've provided clarity that within 12 months we've suggested should be the time frame associated with.
So what are we dealing with here?
This is number 18. So,
okay, so can I just ask about condition 18, because I have the benefit of being on the DAP last week when we dealt with the other one and these same conditions popped up. So last week there was clarification by the Shire in relation to this same condition that it really was during construction only. During the construction phase, which is not unheard of, if you damage Shire infrastructure, you have to fix it. So does a condition 18 in relation to this development apply to construction phase only? It relates to repair and reinstatement of road infrastructure. So does this apply during construction?
I think 18 directly relates to the impact of construction.
Yep. So during the however long period, if they damage the road, that's what condition 18 is. So perhaps needs to be reworded slightly to make that clearer.
Did you say that you had already reworded?
Through the chair, we actually have some suggested wordings that we.
I have that wording because it came up last week at a different proposal.
That's why I'm at a loss then.
Yes.
I'm thinking I've missed an email, but you have it there.
I have it from the previous meeting where the Shire responded to that applicant with some clarification about the intent of this same.
Okay, thank you for that. And just on a condition that the applicant hasn't raised, but I would like to question you on. In terms of the construction management plan, I think we're dealing with condition 5. Yeah. Would you normally see something along the lines of biosecurity in that as well, consideration of those matters, or do you feel that that's dealt with otherwise? I'm thinking particularly of, wash down and, dealing with the diebacks and the phytophthora sort of issues.
Through the chair, we hadn't contemplated that. I guess because there's no significant bush that they'll be travelling through as such.
Okay.
There is bush to the southeast and direct east of the site, where you could argue, I guess, there could be dust movement and therefore dieback type movement. But because there's no direct natural vegetation on the site itself, I guess we had contemplated that.
All right, thank you for the answer. That's okay. I have to leave it there.
I have a few. We're not done. Just in relation to condition 2, and this, I just got a bit confused. So I note your response to the Reg 13 request for clarification about which set of plans condition 2 refers to. So can you clarify what are the key differences between the set of plans that were originally submitted that we're proposing to revert to and the set of plans that were recently received? What are the key differences?
The key difference is we sort of took the application as being the lodgement, official lodgement, as opposed to the development application date. So the one that's being proposed, the 10th of December, is in fact the actual date of the application of the report itself, whereas the 13th was the actual official lodgement of the DAP application. So in terms of reference to the document, it's the 10th of December.
Yeah.
But then the document is cross-referencing to the application itself rather than the official lodgement.
Okay, so I'm just trying to get my head around that because this is saying that the development needs to be carried out with the approved plans, assuming those are the ones we approved. Received on the 13th, on the 10th of December.
No, I've amended that.
And amended.
With the approved plan, not received with the approved plans dated 10th.
Okay.
So
and then that would mean that we're approving the plans from December.
That's correct.
And not the recently amended plans, correct?
The amended plan is only in regards to the bushfire.
Thank you. That's what I was after. Great, thank you. Condition 3, and unless I'm reading it incorrectly, requires the submission of some information and detailed plans prior to commencement of development. When I look at that information that's requested, I wonder why that information wouldn't have been required prior to us determining the DA. So can you comment on that for me, please? So that level of detail, should we not rather have had that prior to making a decision on it? Do you think that would affect our decision on this or not? Or is it just so detailed that it shouldn't really matter?
I think given the temporary nature of what's been proposed from the facilities amenity for the construction stage, I don't think it'll be critical from the aspect whereby it's just removed and it's not significantly impacted, whereby the overall development will impact the surrounding amenity. Given that you've got about 224 sea containers as the base itself, so this would be quite significant. Yes.
Okay.
That's my view.
All right. No, well, that's what I'm asking. I'm asking your view. So onto decommissioning. So you've recommended conditions 11 and 20 relating to decommissioning plans, and the applicant seems to be saying, well, you don't need that because this is, we're going to have tenure and it's actually a permanent thing. So what's your view on that?
I think the condition that there's two conditions yet, similar conditions. One's the decommissioning and rehabilitation plan. This is more the high level type in terms of giving us what are some of the plans that's going to be implemented from a strategic point of view for decommissioning perspective, so that we can get an idea if the question is being asked by the community or those concerned residents, we can say, right, this is what's being proposed. High level type of document, saying, right, in the event that this decommission, these are the things that will be done, the old principle will be removed, land would be made clear, any concrete and so forth shall be removed, or a topsoil of say 500 or above being put in and ripped and so forth for the future use for agricultural purposes, something along those lines.
Okay, so I understand why you would, and I understand the difference that you've outlined between the higher level and then the more detailed when we get to that point. But I'm wondering why you need, given what the applicant is saying, and I'm just trying to understand this right. The applicant is saying this is different to others. we actually will have tenure. We're going to have tenure, and to us, this is long-term, permanent. Why do you need a decommissioning plan at all? What would you need that for, the Shire?
I think, Tricia, it's more of a community concerns that's being raised with a lot of this renewable energy. And I think from the Shire's point of view, speaking myself, is to give that assurance to the community, address concerns that have been addressed, and as part of the applicant for this proposed development, gives it assurance to the community this will be done.
So if we were to say, given what the applicant's saying, if we were to tweak that condition or amalgamate, or just because I have some thoughts, if we were to say in the event that the operation ceases, because it's basically saying you have to provide this plan now, this higher level plan now, when they have no intention of decommissioning. So, and I have some wording that I'm thinking of, if we were to say, look, in the event they do stop, and rather than letting it just sit there forever, then there's something that kicks in, and I can raise that later, but would that be something you'd contemplate, given this is a little bit different to the other examples?
I think for that, I guess, confirmation or assurance, I'll be happy to sort of look at that as part of in the event, so we cover that, at least give that assurance.
Okay.
Sorry, before we move on, Jay, just through that, just kind of a question back from a planning perspective.
Sure.
Currently, they're saying they're going to buy it.
Yeah.
But we're looking at it, currently they don't own it.
Yeah.
So it's a fair bit of trust there that that's going to happen.
Yeah.
If it doesn't happen,
so
I suppose that's my question from a planning perspective.
So, and I think we can get to that during debate. I guess what I'm hearing is we intend to have tenure, and this is going to be long term. So in the event that you don't need it anymore, I'm just wondering to put an imposition to require a plan that don't intend to is also, I don't want to debate that now. We can deal with that.
One related question, if I could, is what's the difference between this and any other major development proposal? We don't put decommissioning plans for an office building or a...
To the chair, we've had that very same conversation using St George's Terrace's buildings and watching one of the hotels disappear the other day. Mm-hmm. And it's a fair and valid question, and we've debated that internally, that very question. And it goes back to, I guess, our community's understanding and appreciation and this new world order, in that we've got multiple applications. Some of them are wind farms, and our community and ratepayers to our elected members, let alone the officers, are very much talking about the perception of renewables as being new age compared to our traditional understanding of high-rise buildings, for example. So we're responding, quite frankly, to perceptions of our community in relation to the questions they're asking of our elected members and the council, in saying these things are fly by night, they're going to come and go, technology is going to change, innovation will occur, that we're going to be left with all these mounds of blades for wind farms, you've heard that argument, and we're going to be left with all these stagnant batteries and the like. How are we going to manage this? How is it renewable? All those sort of philosophical, rhetorical questions that we actually don't have answers to either. But our community is asking us, demanding of us some conditions, some response to predict the future, which we appreciate is difficult from a planning sense and is new world thinking in relation to us being best practice, predicting, the 5 R's, reduce, recycle, reuse, all those sort of things that we're trying to do best practice. Do we have the exact answer? No. But we want to believe that there is some sort of solution to that problem, responding to the requests of our community.
Okay, thanks.
A couple more. In relation to condition 12, and so condition 12 talks to prior to commencement, all vehicle access points, car parking areas, internal vehicle access ways shall be constructed. The applicant's saying there's a little bit of a concern about, well, hang on a minute, those access points. So can you clarify whether this condition only relates to the access point on Narrogin Valley Road for the purpose of construction and the emergency access point on Booth Street? It's not broader than that, right? It's just those 2 access points.
Thank you, Chair. As part of the, I guess, clarification, and we've sort of worded the proposed modification and it does include, as part of it, to make clear, is the primary access point onto Narrogin Valley Road, and the emergency access point on Bush Street.
Okay.
So we made it clearer in terms of saying what is it from a clarity point of view.
All right.
So that's the proposed.
Okay. We might make that more specific. Right. Mr. CEO, you.
It's got some words. It's got some
Have
words. Is that
Yeah,
right?
I stole them. No, you go ahead.
Sorry.
Okay, you've got alternate wording
Yes.
there.
Yeah.
Right.
So the proposed wording is prior to the commencement of the use, the primary vehicle access point onto Narrogin Valley Road, car parking areas and internal vehicle accessway, including emergency access point on both streets, shall be constructed to the satisfaction of local government.
Yeah.
So we included both street and Narrogin Valley.
Okay, did you have a follow-up on that?
Not a follow-up on that, no, I have another question.
All right, let me just finish with this one, and this is for Mr. CEO, just to go back to the question about workforce accommodation, and the responsible authority report goes into a lot of detail about that, and intimates that if it's going to be required, then you need to do all this stuff, but it's actually not part of the application. So my initial thought was, why would you go into all this detail in the RAR about workforce accommodation if none is being proposed? And with this application and another one that I've had the benefit of seeing, it seems that the construction workforce will be accommodated in town and surrounding areas. But if everybody's proposing that arrangement, you sort of answered that, well, already there's a bit of a squeeze. If everyone's justifying that same thing, there's going to be an issue. So to my mind, if workforce accommodation is required, there's nothing proposed as part of this application, well, then they need a separate DA. I wouldn't just leave it to chance. So can you comment on that for me a little bit more?
Absolutely, Chair, thank you. We have acknowledged that there is no workforce accommodation proposed, and therefore we've suggested actually to change those two advice notes. That if a workforce accommodation is proposed, then you shall submit a DA to that effect. But as the Shire President, I think, alluded to earlier to the applicant, the question was, are you proposing? The answer was effectively with respect, probably not. And they use, without misquoting, existing housing stock and accommodation was what I think I heard. That's contrary to some extent to what we were previously told at previous sessions. We've got indicative 150-person camps for indicative 18 months. And to be fair, some of that workforce may occur off-site in relation to containerised battery systems. So we appreciate that some of that can occur off-site and probably will occur off-site. But there is the actual site preparation to allow for this, which is not insignificant. And then obviously commissioning on-site will be not insignificant either for long periods. So the inference is that there will, in our view, definitely be required an advice note that says a DA will be required for any workforce camp if you are contemplating one. And by the way, our LPP regarding TWA's transit temporary workforce accommodation should apply and will apply. The broader question goes to your observation about the inference of arguably what I would call the nexus and indirect relationship of the impacts on our community on housing stock and rents and that short commodity of housing and land, of which there is zero of either. And as a local government, we are no less aware than anyone else, acutely aware of the impacts, both individually and cumulative, of these projects. We have 11 projects, 6 of them within the Shire, 7 are within the Shire, which we are 3 of them currently lodged, all of which have minimum 150-person work camps, 3,200 work camps in total, over a 7-year period, with known projects to address the 2030 cessation of coal from Collie. That's the level, scale, and unusualness of this particular application times 10 others that we are at the forefront of in Western Australia, that the current WA Planning Commission and SPP policies in 3.6 do not contemplate, have not contemplated. And hence, workforce is certainly, accommodation is certainly an element, but should not be construed as a CEF type argument in our view. Workforce accommodation issues are more horrendous than anything to do with CEF. Hopefully that answers your question.
It does. Thank you. All right. You had another question?
What, in your view, would be the impact or the downside or upside of only approving stage 1?
I think from my perspective, from just approving stage 1 gives it that certainty for us to approve, and then the others can be considered as when the development has been approved and they want to include stage 2, 3, 4, then a separate application is required. I have no objection on this one.
I think we're moving to the point where we might deal with the report, unless there's any
Chair, I
last.
wonder if I could seek an adjournment for 10 minutes for a comfort break.
Happy to second
10
that.
minutes? 10 minutes?
Oh, so
How comfortable. Right.
Can be quick.
All right. Does anyone wish to second that
I'm happy
procedural
to.
motion?
Yes.
Seconded, Karen Hyde. We will adjourn this meeting for 5 whole minutes
To vote on that, please.
for a comfort break. All those in favour? Carried.
Got the stopwatch going?
I'll make the most of it too.
Just testing my microphone. Can anyone hear me at the moment?
Right, we will now resume the meeting after that comfort break. I think we've had a lot of discussion through these questions, so I'm going to now move to the report. And we will need a mover and a seconder for the recommendation in the report. What I've proposed to do is to move the recommendation myself. I've got there's so much that's happening here with conditions, and so I think I will move the recommendation in the report, and I will seek and deal with that stuff up front and seek a seconder. So what I'm actually,
Just clarify, I've had trouble with my communication. Just clarify, am I coming through now okay?
Yes, you are, Councillor. Thank you.
Sorry to interrupt, Presiding Member. Thank you.
That's all good. I will just clarify for anyone else watching online and for the purpose of the minutes that I will be moving the recommendation in the responsible authority report, and I will deal with any amendments on an individual basis. So do I have a seconder for that recommendation? Thank you, President Ballard. All right. Before I speak to the primary motion, I'd like to deal with some amendments, and this does not preclude other members from moving others that I might not pick up. The first amendment is to amend condition 2 to replace the date of 13 February 2025 with 10 December 2024, as per the Shire's response to the Reg 13 request for clarification. Do I have a seconder for that amendment? Thank you, Karen. The reason for that is clear. It's just to ensure that condition 2 refers to the correct set of planning documents. Are there any other comments that anyone wishes to make on that? All right, I will put that amendment to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Then I would like to move an amendment to delete condition 4 and replace it with a new condition that reads as follows. This approval is for stage 1 of the development only and does not include approval or approval in principle for stages 2 and 3, which will require separate development approval at an appropriate future time. Do I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Clayton Hyam. Look, the reasons for this is I'm not personally comfortable to issue even an in-principle approval for 2 significant later stages when the detail of those stages is not available for us to make a properly informed decision on both the individual and the cumulative impacts of those future stages. A lot can change in 5 to 10 years, including this issue of community enhancement funding. So there certainly is merit to it in my view, and we'll deal with that later. It's really difficult for the panel to, from my perspective, to deal with that in the current environment where there isn't yet a properly approved policy and the broader framework doesn't really deal with that. And hopefully it will. But I'm just thinking that stages 2 and 3 might be a whole new ballgame in terms of the type of infrastructure, the type of impact, the ability to apply policies to those later stages at a point in time where we might struggle to do that at the minute. So I think they need to be carved out and dealt with later. Second, I'd like to speak to that.
Just to support what you're saying there, the planning framework we've talked about today is behind the 8 ball a little bit in terms of these sorts of infrastructure proposals. But it might be in 5 years' time, planning framework's caught up and there'll be, as you say, policies and things that we can introduce into a new development application for these stages. So I'm fully supportive of the amendment.
Thank you. Does any other member wish to speak for or against? Karen?
Thank you. I'm speaking in support of this amendment, and certainly as a result of the conversations that we've had, I'm quite concerned that there could be, for future stages, other technical documentation required, changes even in the operator. It's all very well to say that we're going to be here for good, but we don't know that. This is about a land use, and therefore what we know is about stage 1. That has been assessed, and I'm comfortable with keeping this approval to what we know. Thank you.
Any other member wish to speak for or against that amendment? No? All right, I will not seek to add to that any further. Can I put that amendment to the vote? All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. And I would like to move an amendment to condition 9 that relates to landscape screening. Not comfortable to delete it, but I'd like to move an amendment so that the condition reads as follows. Prior to the completion of construction, the applicant shall submit to and have approved by the Shire of Narrogin a landscape screening plan that demonstrates how visual screening will be achieved through a combination of retained vegetation and new planting along visually sensitive boundaries of the site, particularly where the development is visible from public roads or sensitive receptors. The plan shall A, clearly identify the locations and extent of proposed screening, including areas of retained vegetation and new planting. B, detail the species to be planted, plant densities and expected mature heights. C, be designed to enhance the visual amenity of the development. And D, be implemented within 6 months of completion of construction and maintained for the life of the development to the satisfaction of the Shire. Do I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Karen. I do feel that if the Shire feels there is the need for landscape screening, and I think that was covered off in the response to some questions, despite some of the statements in the RA, then condition 9 should be amended to. There wasn't actually anything that condition that required the landscape plan. So A, I think we need a landscape plan, and for a development like this of this scale and this value, I don't think that's a massive imposition. So the need for the landscape plan was admitted in the condition, and now we will require that. And I think it should be required to demonstrate how screening of the development will be achieved by existing and new landscaping. Do you wish to speak?
I do take the point around sensitive receptors, and particularly during a construction period. Having heard from the officers, I don't think it will have an impact on bushfire issues and so on and so forth, but I think it could enable this development, therefore, to sit better within the landscape. Thank you.
Does any other member wish to speak for or against that amendment? I'll put that amendment to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Then I would like to, the applicant has requested that we delete conditions 11 and 20 relating to decommissioning plans. I do not intend to do that, but I would like to move an amendment to condition 11 and to incorporate condition 20, and I have the wording for governance to make it easier, so that the amended condition states, in the event the operation of the battery energy storage system is to cease, no later than 1 year prior to the anticipated cessation of operations, the proponents shall submit a detailed decommissioning and rehabilitation plan to the satisfaction of the Shire. The plan shall provide a methodology for decommissioning and site rehabilitation, outline waste management and recycling approaches, and identify timeframes for rehabilitation works. All infrastructure shall be removed and the site rehabilitated in accordance with the plan within 2 years of cessation or within an alternate timeframe agreed by the Shire. Do I have a second on that amendment? Thank you, Clayton. Look, the reason for me moving that amendment is the applicant has indicated that development should be considered permanent, and that's fine. And they may or may not get tenure, and the intention is so we will assume that. But in the event that that doesn't work out, I guess this amended condition would assist the Shire to ensure exactly what the CEO sort of alluded to, that unused infrastructure doesn't remain, doesn't become unsightly, doesn't become an issue for the local community. And this should not impact the applicant if, as per their suggestion, that they will have permanent tenure and they do intend to keep going, it shouldn't actually impact or be a burden on them at all. It's really just a fail-safe for the Shire to have in the event that this becomes an issue. Aidan, do you wish to speak a second?
Just to agree with you that it does give the Shire a degree of comfort in terms of how they deal with their community, and it's probably something we're going to look at with every application that comes through for these sorts of, whether it's a wind farm or a BESS, it doesn't matter. But I think there are those uncertainties around some of these things. I'm happy to support that proposal.
Thank you. Does any other member wish to speak for or against this amendment?
I just wanted to, I mean, I support the amendment in the sense that I support having these sorts of decommissioning and rehabilitation plans. We are dealing with a rural area, and in the event that this does not continue or whatever, that we understand it can return to a land form and a use that is appropriate for the zoning and its context of the day. With something of this scale, however, I'm wondering whether if in part of stage one should be decommissioned prior to moving on to something else, whether this rewording actually deals adequately with staged decommissioning rather than decommissioning as a whole.
I might then use my opportunity to close to respond to that. And if this amendment is lost, then we will move to something different. I guess staged decommissioning, if there is the intent to keep going, is not what I have in mind with this amendment. This is really a full decommissioning where the development is not operated anymore. I'm less concerned about a staged decommissioning if there's a bit that you need to decommission to move to stage two. At this point, they actually look quite separate. And I think it would be in the applicant's interest to deal with their own decommissioning. And I don't think the intent of this is to deal with that on site. This is really if they walk away and leave the Shire with this thing that's just sitting there for the community forever. So I guess that is the intention behind me moving this. We will put that amendment to the vote. If that's lost, then we can deal with a separate one. All those in favour of that amendment? Carried unanimously. Thank you. I'd like to amend condition 12 to read as follows. Prior to the commencement of the use, construction vehicle access point on Narrogin Valley Road and the emergency access point on Booth Street, as well as the car parking areas and internal vehicle access way shall be constructed to the satisfaction of the local government. Do I have a seconder for that amendment? Thank you, Mr. President. The reason for that is this just makes it clear which vehicle access points need to be constructed. It just clarifies that, sharpens the condition a little. Is there anything you wish to add?
No, I'd just like to, yeah, agree with you. Thank you.
Is there any member for or against that amendment? Speak against it? Okay, all those in favour? Carried unanimously. Then I'd like to move two separate amendments that are sort of less procedural. And the first one deals with condition 13 relating to a public art contribution. Personally, I struggle with the fact that this development is not a publicly accessible development. I struggle. So therefore having art on site doesn't make sense to me. Secondly, I think if it's about trying to lean, sorry, before I delete the condition. So do I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Mrs. Hyde. So the reason for that is the second one to sort of lean in the direction where we'd rather have a contribution. I just struggle with that under the framework that applies to impose that sort of requirement. Do you wish to speak?
I agree. I think we're on difficult ground with developments of this nature that are out there. Again, they're not publicly accessible. They're not really trying to draw attention to themselves. It's not a place where the public actually has access. They're closed off sites. You know, again, with the way that the policy has been endorsed, etc., I'm happy to support the deletion of this.
Thank you. Other members wish to speak for or against?
I'm actually for deleting that condition, but my question is going to be put through as an advice note. An advice note that they are encouraged to voluntarily engage with the Shire.
Dogs, let me just grab that. So I can have these.
I don't think whether you want to put that in as separate when we get down to the advice notes rather than dealing with it here.
All right.
Madam Chair, I'm happy either way. I don't want to confuse things too much.
No. I'm happy if that procedurally works to change that amendment to delete condition 30 and to reword it as an advice note.
I'm happy to continue with my seconding of that.
Thank you. To the extent that the applicant is encouraged to engage with the Shire to discuss.
Can I read some wording out?
Sorry?
Can I read some wording out for the advice note?
Please.
But the applicant is encouraged. The applicant is encouraged to voluntarily engage with the Shire of Narrogin to implement public art contributions consistent with the Shire's public art strategy and master plan 2019. Contributions can be through direct implementation or cash in lieu, supporting community cultural enrichment and visual integration of renewable energy infrastructure.
That sounds fabulous. I'm happy with that wording. Right. Happy with that?
Yes, I'm happy as seconded. Very good.
Okay. Anyone wish to comment on that amended wording to the amendment? No? All right. Let's vote on that amendment. All those in favour? Carried unanimous. And then I propose to delete conditions 14, 15 and 16 relating to the Community Enhancement Fund, and I will give my reason for that once I have a second. Anyone wish to second that? Thank you, Mr. Hyam. I absolutely get when we've dealt with something at, up north a little while ago on a very similar issue, and I get the issue here, and I think it needs to be sorted so that local governments can actually look at enforcing such a fund, because I understand the impact it has on your communities, and the CEO made a valid point that I hadn't actually thought of in terms of rateable impacts. These are properties that are generating significant revenue for the proponents, yet from a rateability point of view, the Shire's not getting the benefit of that for the broader community. So I absolutely get that. But I do struggle, while there is a draft policy and it's going to likely be endorsed, I just struggle at this very minute about imposing such a substantial requirement on a development without what I see is a solid planning basis and therefore very clear and identified direct need nexus for this development. And I guess that's one of the reasons, as I mentioned earlier, that if we can defer any consideration of stages 2 and 3, maybe this would have been solidified a little more. I think it's something that does need to be addressed. Just right at the minute, I personally wouldn't be comfortable with supporting those conditions from a planning point of view. Does the secretary wish to speak?
Thank you. Based on the policy arrangement that's currently being put in place, and I can't see this as really passing the test of legitimate planning condition that we can deal with. I fully understand what the intent is, the desire to make sure that these organisations contribute to the community in some way, but there is no planning basis for us to work with here. So I reluctantly, I support the motion to delete.
Thank you. Other members wishing to speak for or against? This is your chance. President.
Thank you.
Allard.
I will speak against removing these 3 points. It is, and I do understand the reasoning at the moment. I suppose from a council's perspective, my perspective, as the proponent has stated in the application, that they decided not to use the state planning framework for bushfire management plan and instead use best practice out of Victoria. That's, I suppose, where I'm leaning my side to. We've looked at this, and we haven't just drawn it out of the sky. We've actually done a lot of work on and a lot of research on it. And the fact there isn't any state planning currently in place, as much as we've been trying for over 12 months to get the state to put some planning in place around this because we knew it was coming. We're in the process of changing our landscape. We're going from a regional area to becoming a very industrial area very quickly around the renewables, and unfortunately, it is not. I don't see it. It's going to be. I think it's going to be a positive going forward, but at the same time, we've got a community that is going to be very different. And if we can't support that community, it doesn't get the support from the proponents. It is going to be forever and ever a forever fighting battle between they've come in, they've taken, they've told, they've not engaged, they've not taken the community with them, and that is the issue that I have currently. Without something like this in place, where they can be bringing the community along with them, I don't believe that's going to be there. And it's this change that, as the CEO mentioned, it's unprecedented at the moment in WA. And unfortunately we're at the forefront. It'd be nice to be someone else leading it, and then we just pick up the coattails. But we've got to plan this going forward for not only our community, but quite a lot of regional communities across WA that are about to have this thrown on the doorstep and not have the ability to actually have any say to say no, that we're a farming community. It is changing. So from my perspective, I'm voting against removing those points.
Thank you, President Ballard. Any other member wish to speak for or against?
Yes,
Councillor.
presiding member. Yeah, thank you. I'd like to put my opinion across. My name is Graham Broad. I'm an elected member of the Shire Narrogin and currently serve as the Deputy Shire President. I've lived in Narrogin for over 60 years. I love the region and I deeply value the life we share here. Today, I speak strongly in support of including the Community Enhancement Fund as part of the development approval process. I am passionate to advocate for energy projects, proud to actively support our state and nation's ambitions to achieve a sustainable energy future. I warmly welcome multiple applications coming to our Shire, knowing they will help shape and secure a prosperous future for our community. I acknowledge the perception that the Community Enhancement Funds may not traditionally align with the strict criteria for development conditions. However, I firmly believe that ethically it is part to form this approval. Including the CEF as a condition provides clarity, fairness, and demonstrates a shared commitment between the proponent, the approval panel, the Shire, and most critically, our community. Establishing a clear precedent by incorporating a CEF consistent with best practices already evident in other jurisdictions. It is critical. It sends a strong signal not only for this particular project, but also future developments, underscoring a genuine commitment to our community benefit. During the development discussions, legitimate issues around roads, land use, traffic, vegetation management, bushfire risks, and noise inevitably arise. Whilst essential, these discussions foster negativity and public resistance. By embedding a Community Enhancement Fund, we proactively shift the narrative, providing positive, tangible, enduring benefits that our community can embrace. We know that there will be economic gains immediately, such as local employment during construction and stimulate local business. Nevertheless, our vision must extend to the long-term value creation. This enduring benefit is exactly what the CEF delivers: sustainable, long-lasting outcomes for our entire region. Such funds have potential to significantly enrich our local social programs, arts, culture initiatives, sport, rec, aged care facilities, and vital Aboriginal initiatives, among others. Managed transparently by a committee that includes representatives from both the Shire and the proponent, that assures fairness, accountability, and a true partnership. By adopting these conditions, we do more than simply approve a project. We build a genuine partnership, one that clearly demonstrates the proponent's social licence to operate a new age industry within our region and our agriculture-dominated community landscape. We are convinced this approach is not only the right, but proven effective, as evidenced extensively across the east coast of Australia. Although the state government has not yet formally established planning frameworks around such guidelines, our local government respecting our ratepayers and residents, recognising the importance of this approach. It deserves inclusion, testing and validation. Let us not be the weakest chain link in this progressive approach, but rather be the strong and decisive example for others to follow. The proponent is already showing willingness to collaborate and contribute meaningful towards this principle. Let us formalise and test the commitment with an explicit condition that binds not just for the current proponent, but for other successors to the project. Their right to appeal remains intact and will ultimately test their genuine willingness to fulfil their stated social licence commitments. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor. Has everyone had an opportunity to speak?
No.
Would you like to?
I'm the missing link, aren't I? I understand the intent of this, I understand the passion of the elected members and of the community. I think there's been really good work done in the formulation of this as a draft policy, but therein lies an issue for me that it is still a draft policy and has yet to be adopted. And as a policy still would remain as a due regard document. Nonetheless, as an adopted policy, it would be given additional weight beyond that which one can apply because it's been publicly advertised and is on its pathway to a council decision. And in that, I find difficulty in supporting the conditions as they are. Picking up on what Councillor Broad has said, however, I wonder whether, in given previous discussions with the applicant, and we have had this situation in other regional local governments, whether at this point it is rather similar to the public art, where it could be treated as more of an advisory thing and an encouragement, rather than as conditions of approval. I understand that they could appeal it, but therein lie other costs and difficulties associated for the Shire as well as for the applicant. But I think, the opportunity when this is properly embedded in the planning framework is a potential way forward, and particularly for stages that follow this and other applications down the track. So I am in favour of deleting those conditions, but I would like to see potentially other wording come forward for an advice note that would encourage collaboration between the Shire and the proponent to support contributions towards community enhancements, etc.
Thank you. Councillor, do you have a question? You've already spoken, so do you have a question?
I was just going to add, presiding member, but I don't think it's the right time. Thank you.
Okay. Look, as mover, I will close, and there are two things that I'd like to say. One is there's been a little bit of language that's come through in the submissions and so on about the policy and urgent business, and whilst after we'd submitted the application and so on. So I'm mindful, and that's not a criticism. What I'm mindful of is picking up on Karen Hyde's point is if this policy is in place, it's been adopted following due process and public consultation, the Shire is on a much better footing when a DA is then lodged, I think, with a panel like this, and I would be more comfortable. So a decision like this doesn't preclude future attempts at seeking this funding. It's just this one, the timing is a little difficult. So I think once your policy is in place, and then then when a DA is lodged, they know the policy is in place, they know what they're looking at, and then it gets dealt with accordingly. So I think timing is the issue with this particular application. The other thing I would say, and whether this gets moved by somebody as a separate amendment, and I'm happy for that to happen, I do encourage the applicants very strongly, given the conversation that's taken place on this item and the impact that these massive projects have on local communities. I strongly encourage that dialogue to still continue and for the applicant to proactively engage with the Shire about some sort of fund or contribution outside of the planning process until this policy or broader planning framework has addressed this issue in a more fulsome way. With that, I'm going to put this particular amendment to the vote to delete conditions 14, 15 and 16. And all those in favour? Against? Thank you. Moving on to a couple of other amendments. I'd like to amend condition 18 so as to apply to the construction phase only. The amended condition could then read as follows. The applicant shall be responsible for the repair, reinstatement or replacement of any public road infrastructure that is damaged or degraded during the construction phase of the development as a direct result of development-related traffic to the satisfaction of the Shire of Narrogin. Where agreed by the Shire, the applicant may instead make a financial contribution equal to the cost of the necessary repair works. Do I have a seconder for that? Thank you, President Ballard. Look, the reason is this, this makes the condition clearer about what it's actually trying to achieve. It's more certain and measurable, and it addresses the Shire's concerns about damage to infrastructure, to their infrastructure during the construction phase. President Ballard, anything you'd like to add? A second.
I'd just like to support that, but just I suppose my concern over it is we're talking about. I mean, I'm talking about the crossovers as well as the turning on those local roads, where currently there may be 1 or 2 light vehicles a month, and we're going to have all of a sudden have 30 trucks a day.
Yeah.
So it's certainly I'm certainly for it, yes.
Any other member wish to speak for or against this amendment? Okay, all those in favour? Carried unanimously. The last amendment from me is to delete condition 19, which requires consultation with main roads prior to the use of any oversized vehicles, and to instead include this as an advice note. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, President Ballard. The reason is this is really not a direct planning matter. It's more appropriate as an advice note. Anything you wish to add?
No.
Any other member wish to speak for or against that amendment? Okay, all those in favour? Carried. I will revert to the primary motion as amended now. I'll support the application subject to the conditions as amended. Although use not listed in the planning scheme, the Shire's report demonstrated that there has been some engagement on this and that the proposal meets the objectives of the rural zone, also meets the state's objectives to encourage renewable energy in rural areas where environmental impacts can be minimised. There were some objections received during consultation, but it appears these objections seem mistakenly relate to a different proposal and not specifically the proposal, the subject of this DA. The proposal, although we have asked for landscape screening, I do get some comfort it will be set back significantly from property boundaries and doesn't include reflective materials or elevated structures visible from adjoining roads or nearby properties. And I think that issues like traffic and bushfire management have been appropriately covered off in the Shire's report and the amended conditions. The proposal is consistent with the planning framework, so I'm happy to support. President Ballard, as seconder of the primary motion, would you like to speak?
I would, and could I put one last amendment, put one advice note in?
You sure can.
At the bottom, in relation to the CEF, that the applicant is strongly encouraged to voluntarily establish and implement a community enhancement fund with the Shire of Narrogin, consistent with the Shire's community enhancement funds policy. The recommended contributions reflect the established national best practice standards, specifically those articulated around the New South Wales Department of Planning, Housing, Infrastructure's Benefit Sharing Guide, November 2024. That's approximately $850 per megawatt solar generation capacity, 150 megawatt battery storage capacity indexed annually. The Shire explicitly notes the absence of formalised state-level guidelines in Western Australia does not diminish the validity, necessity or appropriateness of such contributions. Indeed, as demonstrated through the applicant's own reliance on interstate bushfire management guidelines, CFA guidelines, adopting established interstate frameworks in the absence of state-specific policies, prudent, responsible and consistent proactive planning practices. Furthermore, the Shire advises that the imminent state government policy developments through initiatives such as Power WA and Western Power Corporation connection agreements are anticipated to formalise similar community benefit sharing mechanisms. For active adherence to the Shire's adopted policy now will place a component in alignment with emerging regulatory frameworks, thus reinforcing community acceptance, minimising risk and securing a robust social licence to operate within rural agricultural communities. So sorry, it was a bit long, but the first bit is just the first paragraph is what the, so the first, sorry, the rest of it, so the rest of it's comment more than.
Okay.
Oh, so could you just
So I'll read
repeat
that out
what,
again?
yeah, sorry.
Yeah, just read the first bit then.
The applicant is strongly encouraged to voluntarily establish and implement a community enhancement fund with the Shire of Narrogin consistent with the Shire's community enhancements fund policy. The recommended contributions reflecting established national best practice standards, specifically those articulated by the New South Wales Department of Planning, Housing, Infrastructure Benefit Sharing Guideline, November 2024, approximately $850 per megawatt solar generation and $150 per megawatt battery storage capacity indexed annually.
Thank you.
Sorry.
That's all right. Do I have a seconder for that amendment? Councillor Broad, do you wish to speak to that amendment, Councillor?
No, thank you, presiding member. I agree.
All right. Does any other member wish to speak for or against that inclusion of that advice note? Karen.
I'd be happy to support it without the reference to New South Wales and that bit that followed. Just I can't remember quite how that sentence worked, but
so
it was. I think it sort of ought. I think you got to the point of the policy.
Yep.
But then there was another sentence that followed with New South Wales. I was somewhat uncomfortable with that reference myself, but that's where I'll leave my comment.
Okay. President Ballard, rather than potentially losing that, are you happy to amend that advice?
I'm happy to amend that.
Councillor Broad, are you happy to amend as suggested? Yes. All right. Well, that forms part of the new amendment. Does any member wish to speak for or against the amended amendment?
Happy to support it.
Me too.
All right. Let's put that amendment to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Reverting back to you.
So thank you, and I'd just like to thank the panel members for this long process, and as you are aware, it's one of many we're dealing with, and I do appreciate the information, the feedback today, and the work on this, and we'll be back again in a few weeks, I think, for the next one.
Great, thank you. Right, does any other member wish to speak for or against the primary motion as amended?
Happy to support it with all the changes.
I'm happy to support it, presiding member, that however, it's more of a question, which is probably not quite right at this point, but I'll ask it anyway. There was a point of clarification around construction traffic only. Did you add that into your amendment?
I think yes, we did. That was
covered
that was to condition 18.
It was indeed, yeah. Other than that, I'm happy to support as we have amended. Thank you.
Excellent.
I'm happy to support also, presiding member. Thank you.
You wish to speak more specifically to that, councillor, or you?
I'm happy as presented. Thank you very much.
All right. Okay, given we've all had a chance to speak to the primary motion now, I am going to put the primary motion as amended to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Moving then to item 4, Form 2 applications. We don't have any. Section 31 SAT reconsiderations also nil today. Part E, other business. SAT applications, Supreme Court appeals, SAT applications for the DAP are all listed on the website, none of which I believe currently relate to any of the project governments on the agenda today. With that, I close the meeting at 12:21 and thank everyone for your attendance. Thank you.
Thank you all. All the best.